It happened at night, when the world was sleeping. 3 bombs fell on Iran's nuclear sites, and everything changed. This is not just a story of war. It's a story of decisions, power, and fear, of leaders, missiles, and people who didn't choose this. What really happened that night? Why did the U.S. strike? And what comes next? Listen closely, because this is a true story, and it's still unfolding. Chapter 1: The Last Warning. It was late evening in Washington, D.C. The lights were still on at the White House. Inside, President Donald Trump sat with his team. His face was serious. His hands were still. He had made his decision. "Iran is getting too close," he said. One of his generals spoke quietly. "They may have enough uranium in just weeks." Trump looked at the map. He pointed. "Fordow, Natanz, Isfahan, those are the targets." Silence. Then he stood. "Let's move." Just hours before this moment, the world was watching the Middle East. Tensions had grown fast. Israel had attacked Iranian military bases just 1 week earlier. Iran answered with missile strikes. Cities were shaking. People were afraid. And now the U.S. was getting involved, directly. Earlier that week, Trump had spoken to the nation. It was a short message, simple, clear, strong. "If Iran continues this path," he said, "America will act, quickly, powerfully." Some believed he was just talking. Others were not so sure. Iran, meanwhile, refused to stop its nuclear work. Its leaders said they had the right to build nuclear energy. They said, "We are not building a bomb." But U.S. intelligence said something different. They believed Iran was close. Too close. One secret report said, Iran could build a nuclear weapon in less than 30 days. That was enough for Trump. He gave the order. Back in the White House, the room was moving fast. Phones were ringing, plans were printed, pilots were on alert. Everything was ready. At midnight, stealth bombers began to fly. They were almost invisible on radar. B-2 Spirit planes moved like shadows across the sky. They carried something powerful, massive bombs that could break deep underground. The targets were secret nuclear sites, hidden under mountains, guarded by steel, but not safe tonight. The first target, Fordow, then Natanz, then Isfahan. Each one was key to Iran's nuclear program, and all 3 were about to be hit. As the planes flew closer, Trump waited. He said nothing, just watched the clock. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., Tehran time, the first bomb hit. The ground shook. A flash of light. A deep explosion. The U.S. had struck. The president looked up. He whispered to his team, "It's done." But in Tehran, the night was not over. People ran to windows. Sirens screamed. News channels began to report. Explosion near Fordow. Possible attack. In a matter of minutes, the world had changed. Some hoped this was the end of it. Others feared. It was only the beginning. What happens when a warning turns into action? And what comes next? When silence falls after the strike. Chapter 2. Eyes on the nuclear sites. Imagine this. Deep under the mountains of Iran, there are places the world is not supposed to see. Silent tunnels, heavy doors, machines that never stop. These are Iran's secret nuclear sites: Fordow, Natanz, Isfahan. 3 names, but to the world they mean fear. Fordow is built inside a mountain. It is hard to find, even harder to destroy. The walls are thick, the ground is deep. It was made for war. The machines inside? They spin uranium, faster and faster, turning metal into something much more dangerous, into fuel for a bomb. Natanz is bigger. It's older too, but it has a long history. Israel attacked it before, years ago. That time they used a cyber virus. No bombs, no solar power, just a computer code that made machines spun too fast until they broke. But Iran repaired them, and they started again. Then there is Isfahan. This city is beautiful, old, full of color and history. But just outside the city, behind fences and sand, there is a place that holds yellow cake. No, it's not food. It's uranium, a soft powder that starts the whole nuclear process. The world has known about these places for years, but recently, something changed. Intelligence teams from the US and Israel began watching closely. Satellites showed more trucks, more workers, and more heat coming from deep underground. One expert said, "They're moving fast. This isn't normal." In Washington, a new report arrived. It was marked top secret. Inside, it said, Iran may reach 90% uranium purity within 3 weeks. That number, 90%, is very important, because that is bomb level. Anything under 20%, still power, but 90%? That's war. Some people said it was just fear. Others said, "We've seen this before with North Korea. They waited too long, and now North Korea has the bomb." America did not want to repeat that mistake. In Iran, the story was different. Leaders there said, "We are not building a weapon. We are protecting ourselves." They blamed Israel. They blamed America. They said, "If we are attacked, we will answer." But in the shadows, U.S. forces were already preparing. They had pictures, coordinates, maps of every tunnel. They knew exactly where the centrifuges were, where the power came in, where the uranium was stored. The question wasn't where. The question was when. When? In the Pentagon, the tension was high. Some generals said, "Wait." Others said, "Strike now." They all agreed on one thing. If Iran builds a bomb, the whole region could fall into war. President Trump heard every word. He sat in silence. Then he said, "Hit them where it hurts. Take out their heart." And just like that, Fordow, Natanz, Isfahan were marked on the map. The eyes of the world were watching them. But very soon, bombs would fall on them. When secrets grow in silence, they don't stay hidden forever. Chapter 3. The Decision in the White House. The night was quiet in Washington, but inside the White House, something was happening. Behind closed, text cuts off here. Let me know if you'd like to continue from this point. Machines spun too fast until they broke, but Iran repaired them, and they started again. Then there is Isfahan. This city is beautiful, old, full of color and history, but just outside the city, behind fences and sand, there is a place that holds yellow cake. No, it's not food. It's uranium, a soft powder that starts the whole nuclear process. The world has known about these places for years, but recently, something changed. Intelligence teams from the US and Israel began watching closely. Satellites showed more trucks, more workers, and more heat, coming from deep underground. One expert said, "They're moving fast. This isn't normal." In Washington, a new report arrived. It was marked Top Secret. Inside, it said, Iran may reach 90% uranium purity within 3 weeks. That number, 90%, is very important, because that is bomb level. Anything under 20%, still power. But 90%? That's war. Some people said it was just fear. Others said, we've seen this before with North Korea. They waited too long. And now, North Korea has the bomb. America did not want to repeat that mistake. In Iran, the story was different. Leaders there said, "We are not building a weapon. We are protecting ourselves." They blamed Israel. They blamed America. They said, "If we are attacked, we will answer." But in the shadows, U.S. forces were already preparing. They had pictures, coordinates, maps of every tunnel. They knew exactly where the centrifuges were, where the power came in, where the uranium was stored. The question wasn't where. The question was when. In the Pentagon, the tension was high. Some generals said, "Wait." Others said, "Strike now." They all agreed on one thing. If Iran builds a bomb, the whole region could fall into war. President Trump heard every word. He sat in silence. Then he said, "Hit them where it hurts. Take out their heart." And just like that, Fordow, Natanz, Isfahan were marked on the map. The eyes of the world were watching them. But very soon, bombs would fall on them. When secrets grow in silence, they don't stay hidden forever. Chapter 3. The Decision in the White House. The night was quiet in Washington, but inside the White House, something was happening. Behind closed, text cuts off here. Let me know if you'd like to continue from this point. Wrong. They couldn't call for help. There was no turning back. Below them, the world was sleeping. Families in Iran were in bed, children dreaming, old men listening to late-night radio. No one knew that in less than an hour, the earth would shake. At exactly 1:47 a.m. Tehran time, the final code came through. Target confirmed. Weapons clear. The pilot gave a short breath. Copy that. He opened the bay doors. Now, the bomb was ready. It was massive. It was heavy. It was called the MOP, Massive Ordnance Penetrator, designed to break through rock, to reach what lies deep underground. And now it was falling. The pilot whispered, "God help us." Then, silence. 30 seconds later, the ground near Fordow shook like thunder. Boom! The mountain cracked. Dust rose into the air. Alarms screamed. People woke up in fear. What was that? Is it an earthquake? No, it's something else. But the strikes were not over. At 2:01 a.m., the second bomb hit Natanz. Fire lit the sky. Security forces ran to the site. Too late. Centrifuges were destroyed. Tunnels collapsed. A whole section gone. And then, at 2:13 a.m., the last bomb hit Isfahan. It was the deepest hit, a direct blow to Iran's uranium supply. From the air, the pilots watched. Glows of light below, smoke rising. Then, darkness again. Mission complete. Returning to base, the pilot said. And just like that, they disappeared into the sky. In Washington, President Trump got the call. All 3 targets hit. No U.S. losses. He closed his eyes, let out a breath. Thank you, he said, to our pilots, to our team. He looked out the window. The sun was rising. A new day had begun. But the world was no longer the same. When silence is broken by fire, the world must listen. Chapter 5. Shock in Iran was 2:14 in the morning. People in the city of Qom woke up fast. Something had exploded. Windows shook. Dogs barked. Children cried. At first, they thought it was an earthquake, but it wasn't. A man in Fordow opened his door. The sky was glowing orange. He whispered, "Ya Allah, what is happening?" In Natanz, a guard at the nuclear facility tried to call for help. No signal. The tower was down. He looked at the flames rising from the west side. He dropped the phone. He ran. Sirens began to scream across Isfahan. Fire trucks rushed toward the edge of the city. But the road to the uranium plant was blocked, covered in debris and silence. By morning, the news had spread. "Iran has been attacked," said the TV anchor. 3 nuclear sites damaged. Photos appeared online. Smoke, cracks in the mountains, large holes in the ground. People were shocked. In the city of Tehran, crowds gathered. Some shouted, "Death to America! Where was our defense?" Others just stood in silence. They looked afraid. No one expected this. Not like this. Not so deep, so precise. At 10 a.m., the Iranian government made a statement. The speaker's voice was calm. "We confirm that 3 nuclear sites were attacked. No radiation has leaked. Our scientists are safe, but this is an act of war." The leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, appeared on state TV a few hours later. His eyes were hard, his words sharp. America will pay. Our answer will come at the right time, in the right place. People listened carefully. Some felt angry. Others felt afraid. Will Iran fight back? Will there be war? At the main hospital in Isfahan, doctors treated workers from the uranium site. One young man had burns on his arms. Another had dust in his lungs. They were lucky. Most of the staff were not inside when the bomb hit, but their faces told the story. Fear, shock, and silence. On the streets, people asked, "How did the U.S. know where to strike? How did they fly into our skies without warning?" Some blamed spies. Some blamed the government. Many just blamed fate. A grandmother sat on her porch with her grandson. She said, "This is not the first time we are attacked, but every time it hurts the people the most." The boy asked, "Will we be safe, Grandma?" She looked at him. She didn't answer. That night, the sky over Iran was quiet again, but no one slept. People stayed close to their radios, waiting, wondering. Would Iran answer? Would there be another strike? And what would happen next? When bombs fall, the sound stays in people's hearts, and the fear does not leave so easily. Chapter 6. Iran's First Response. Morning came slowly over Tehran. Shops opened late. Schools stayed closed. People whispered in the streets. The air felt heavy, like something was about to happen. At 11 a.m., the military trucks began to move. They rolled through the capital, one by one. Soldiers stood on top with serious faces. Missiles were covered in green cloth. The message was clear. We are ready. Inside a secret command center, Iran's top generals sat at a long table. A large screen showed images of the bombed nuclear sites. Fordow, broken. Natanz, smoking. Isfahan, burning. One general slammed his fist on the table. We must answer. We cannot wait. Another general spoke calmly. But how? Do we hit American troops? Do we attack Israel? Do we risk a full war? They looked at each other, tense, angry, but not reckless. In the office of Supreme Leader Khamenei, there was silence. He stood at the window, watching the city below. An aide entered the room. "Sir," he said, "people are waiting for your answer." The leader did not turn. He spoke softly. "It will come." Later that evening, at 6 p.m., Iran released a new message to the world. It was clear and powerful. The Islamic Republic of Iran will not be silent. This was a crime against our sovereignty. We have the right to respond, and we will. Crowds returned to the streets. Some carried flags. Others carried signs. One sign read, "Blood for blood." Another, "America will regret this." But there was something else in the air. Fear. Older people remembered past wars. The long, painful years. The loss. A woman holding her baby whispered, "Please, not again." That night, a cyber attack hit a U.S. oil company. Their systems shut down. Pipelines froze. Screens went black. Was it Iran? No one claimed it. But the message was clear. At the same time, an Iranian drone flew close to a U.S. base in Iraq. It didn't fire. It only watched. Then it turned around and left. In Washington, the Pentagon received the reports. A general looked at the screen. "This is just the beginning," he said. President Trump was informed. He nodded. "I expected that." Back in Iran, the news played all night. Debates, questions, warnings. Would Iran strike again? Would it be bigger? Would they wait or move fast? In the holy city of Mashhad, a young man prayed in the mosque. His eyes were wet, his hands shaking. He whispered, "God, protect my family, protect my country." And so, the world watched, waited. Because when one fire burns, another often follows. And sometimes, the first answer is only a whisper before the storm. Chapter 7. The World Reacts. The world woke up and held its breath. The news was everywhere. U.S. bombs Iran's nuclear sites. Tehran promises revenge. Is war coming? From America to Asia, from Europe to Africa, people asked the same question: what happens now? In China, the foreign minister stood before cameras. He spoke slowly. "We are deeply concerned. All sides must show restraint. This is not the time for war." China did not support the strike, but it also did not defend Iran. They chose silence. Between the lines. In Russia, the message was different. President Putin appeared on TV. His voice was cold, his words sharp. "The United States has crossed a dangerous line. We will not accept aggression in our region." Was it a warning or a threat? No one was sure. The European Union held an emergency meeting. Leaders looked tired and nervous. France wanted peace. Germany asked for calm. But Poland said something else. "We must stand with our allies. Iran cannot be allowed to build a bomb." Europe was divided. In Israel, the reaction was loud. Government ministers cheered the attack. They called it a success. A message to Iran: we are not alone. On the streets of Tel Aviv, some people danced. Others lit candles. One man said, "This is not celebration. This is relief." But not everyone supported the strike. In Turkey, protests broke out. Young people waved signs: "No to war. Stop the killing." A woman cried on live television. She shouted, "We are tired of fire. We are tired of death." In Pakistan, the government stayed quiet. But people online were not. Social media was full of anger and fear. Some supported Iran. Others blamed America. Many just said, "Don't pull us into this." At the United Nations, voices rose. The Security Council met in New York. Everyone was there, but no one agreed. America defended the strike. Iran called it terrorism. Russia demanded punishment. China called for peace. No vote passed. No plan made. Just words. And more words. Meanwhile, the oil markets shook. Prices jumped. Traders panicked. In gas stations across the world, people waited in line. Fear was spreading faster than fire. In Africa, in South America, in Southeast Asia, the news reached every home. A taxi driver in Kenya said, "It's far away, but we will still feel it." A mother in Argentina asked, "Will this raise food prices again?" Even small voices were asking big questions. Back in Washington, reporters shouted at the press secretary, "Will the U.S. strike again? Will Trump speak today? What is the end goal?" She answered only once. America acted to stop a nuclear threat. Now we want peace, but we are ready for anything. And so the world reacted. Some cheered, some cried, some prayed. But all of them watched, because one act of war never stays in one place. When one country moves, the whole world feels the ground shake. Chapter 8. Firestorm. In Washington, the bombs had fallen. The world had changed. And now, the storm reached Washington. Outside the White House, reporters shouted. Cameras flashed. News vans filled the streets. "Mr. President, do you regret the strike? Are we going to war?" But inside, Trump was calm. He sat in the Oval Office, his phone in one hand, a report in the other. He read the headlines. Then he smiled. In Congress, the reaction was explosive. Republicans clapped. They called the strike bold and necessary. One senator said, "Trump did what others were too afraid to do." But Democrats were furious. A woman from California stood up and shouted, "He did not ask us. He did not wait. He acted alone." Another lawmaker added, "This was not defense. This was a choice, a dangerous one." At night, protests began across the country. In New York, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, people marched. Signs rose in the air. "Stop the war. No more bombs." Some burned American flags. Others sang songs of peace. A college student cried into a microphone, "We want jobs, not war. We want hope, not fear." Social media exploded. No war. Trump strike. Iran attack. Millions of people were talking, fighting, choosing sides. Inside the White House, Trump turned on the TV. He saw the protests, the shouting, the anger. He did not speak, but later he tweeted, "I made America safe. We took out Iran's nuclear heart. Peace through strength." Some Americans agreed. They felt proud. They felt powerful again. One man in Texas said, "This is what leadership looks like. He protected us." But others were afraid. An old woman in Michigan held her husband's photo. He died in the Iraq War. She whispered, "Will more mothers lose their sons?" At the Pentagon, generals were working nonstop. They watched the skies. They read every message. They planned for the next step. One general said, "Iran will answer. We need to be ready." In the streets of Washington, the fear was growing. Some people bought food and water. Others talked about leaving the city. One boy asked his father, "Dad, is the war coming here?" The father didn't know what to say. In the Senate, a voice rose again. "The president cannot take us to war alone. We must vote. We must decide together." A vote was planned. A battle in Washington was now political, not just military. At midnight, the lights were still on at the White House. Trump sat with his advisors. He looked out the window. Outside, the American flag waved in the wind. He turned and said, "They may not like me now, but history will understand." Sometimes the real fire doesn't burn in the sky. It burns in people's hearts. Chapter 9. What Comes Next? The world was awake, but it was not calm. Iran was angry, America was alert, and millions of people were afraid. 3 bombs had destroyed Iran's key nuclear sites. But they didn't destroy the problem. They made it bigger. In Tehran, the streets were still filled with flags and fire. People chanted, leaders warned. One message was heard again and again: "We will respond when the time is right." In Washington, the president gave a short speech. He stood tall. His voice was strong. "We hit hard, we hit fast, and we stopped a nuclear threat." But some asked, did he also start a war? The Middle East held its breath. Israel was on high alert. Saudi Arabia moved its jets. Iraq closed its airspace. Every country prepared. But no one wanted to be next. In the United Nations, there was shouting. One diplomat said, "This could be the first step to World War III. Another replied, "No, it could be the last step before peace." The world was divided. Again. But outside these rooms, in homes, cafes, and classrooms, people asked simpler questions. Will fuel prices go up? Will my brother be sent to war? Is it safe to travel? Is this the end, or just the beginning? In a refugee camp on the Syrian border, a child drew pictures in the dirt, a house, a flag, and 3 black planes in the sky. When someone asked what it was, he said, "This is what the world looks like now." In a classroom in Berlin, a teacher told her students, "You are the next generation. You must learn so you don't repeat this." They listened, quietly. Meanwhile, satellites kept flying, drones kept watching, missiles stood ready. Everyone waited. But for what? Would Iran strike an embassy, a military base? Would it launch rockets? Would it use cyber attacks? No one knew. And that was the most dangerous part, because silence can be the loudest warning. At midnight, a message appeared online. No country name, no flag, just 6 words. "The answer is coming. Be ready." And so the world watches, still, tense, uncertain. What comes next? No one knows. But one thing is clear: peace is not just the end of war.